Everybody, welcome to Scouting the League and welcome inside the draft room. We are back with Fran Duffy at F Duffy NFL is where you can find Fran to talk linebackers today. A spot that is the growing sentiment is it is going to be a strength of this 2026 draft, but as we get closer, we're still a little ways away from April of 2026, so we'll see where it all shakes out. Certainly some fun players, but before we jump in with Fran, make sure you're heading over, liking, subscribing, and sharing this podcast wherever you're listening and watching. No matter where it's at, you can probably find it. Make sure you're following both Fran and myself. Like I said, at F Duffy NFL is where you can find Fran. Links to all of his great stuff he's putting out there. If you love that video portion, he puts out plenty of clips, daily shows, everything you need. I am Rodrik David at Right Step ADV is where you can find me. Spent my time with Falcons and Titans. Titans building has a little bit to figure out there in Tennessee as well. And Atlanta coming off the big win as we record this one against the Bills. But enough of that, Fran. Let's get into the draft room, talk about these linebackers. Again, it sounds like more and more people, more and more draft experts, people are starting to track that 2026 draft, really like this position group, some high-end players, whether that means there's a bunch of first rounders. We know, again, kind of like running backs, linebackers, traditional linebackers have kind of gone down the board a little bit, but some really fun players. What is this group as a whole? Before we jump into really one of the hottest names in the country, what do you think of this position group as a whole?
Yeah, it's a fun group overall. Certainly, you talk about some of these names, and we've seen one of the biggest risers throughout the course of this season in Arvell Reese from Ohio State, who was a backup last year for the national championship defense, really burst onto the scene. It started in week one in that win over Texas. So being able to see him ascend, I think certainly has added a little bit of flavor and spice to this group. But overall, I mean, there's just a bunch of names in all areas of the country to get excited about. So it's definitely a fun group overall.
It becomes, again, a really nuanced conversation with linebackers where, again, the traditional Mike stack linebacker, again, hasn't disappeared. And there's plenty that would argue, hey, you still got to have one. You've got to have that dude because, again, as Derrick Henry's running down your throat, you better have somebody that can step up and tackle. But it becomes the linebacker spot. Is this going to be our pass covering linebacker, our matchup with Christian McCaffrey? This can be our tight end matchup, George Kittle, Sam Laporta. Is this our safety drop guy, our overhang? Or is this our Micah Parsons, hey, stack linebacker coming up, rushing on the edge? So again, you get into a bunch of different flavors of linebackers here, and you can really go a bunch of different directions. Like you said, Arvell Reese is that dude where, again, if you're just watching casually that Ohio State Texas game to start the year, Sonny Styles was the guy, high expectations, probably would have been a day 2 draft pick last year, chooses to come back. So all of a sudden all eyes are on him. And yet he's getting overshadowed at this point. Sonny having a great year. We'll talk about him. But Arvell Reese, is this a linebacker? Is this an edge? Where do you have him graded? Where do you think he ends up come April of 26?
Yeah, right now I do have him graded with my off-ball linebacker group, and I think that until we see more of him being more than just like mugged up on the line of scrimmage, like as a pure, we're going to line him up off the edge, it's 3rd and 8, and he's going to work against the left tackle or work against the right tackle on a consistent basis, then maybe I'm moving him over to the edge rusher group. But I think right now I'm perfectly fine leaving him with that off-ball group. And we had this conversation a year ago when it came to Georgia's Jalen Walker, and it was like, all right, well, what position is he? I'm gonna be honest, man. Like, I think that he does more mentally from the linebacker spot right now than what I saw from Jalen Walker a year ago down at Georgia, and where I feel a little bit more comfortable saying, yeah, like he can read the triangle, he can process things, and that's, to me, like when we talk about linebacker, and this is more outside, like in the media, and fans talking about trying to project these guys from college to the NFL. It's one of the most misdiagnosed positions in the league in terms of trying to say like what is important, and everybody gets really, really excited about the height, weight, speed, and all the traits and the length and all this and that. This is a position where processing is of the utmost importance. You are put in run pass conflict on every single play, instantly. You are close to the ball. You have got to be able to key and diagnose in a blur. And so the ability to be able to do that is very difficult. Now, it helps to have the traits, and certainly Harvell Reese, has the traits to be able to do that, and to overcome, what I would say are like solid, quote unquote instincts and solid processing ability that's still developing there. But there's plenty to be excited about with this player.
Yeah, again, it will be. I think a lot of teams will go back and do their Micah Parsons review on that draft. Again, the way Micah was used at Penn State. We've seen what Mike has become in the NFL. Again, he's maybe this year recovering from the back injury, really is a spot rusher for that Green Bay defense now. We'll say Dallas defense because it just still feels natural. But again, I think that will be a historical analysis for a lot of these teams who had that front office staff in place when Micah came out, because it becomes a similar conversation. He may be Ohio State's best edge rusher come the end of the year, and it's going to be interesting. I think Matt Patricia is a fantastic guy to have him. He had a few of these types of guys in his time in New England. Again, I nightmares of Dante Hightower coming off the edge against Matt Ryan in the Super Bowl. And again, you start thinking about comparisons like that, and again, you can see why that defense. Again, yeah, they got a bunch of dudes, but this guy and that guy calling the plays is big for it.
And it's funny because, as I'm watching him, I watched him right after the week 1 win over Texas. And I watched him again. It was after the Washington game. And I was like, all right, there's a few more games now in the hopper. Let's watch a couple games. So I've done 3 games so far from this season. And I start going through, like, who are the guys with this body type, with this skill set that have come in and made an impact in the league. And honestly, it is one of the things that makes the valuation of the player very difficult. We had the same conversation with Jalen Walker a year ago, where it's like, all right, like, if he's Leo Chenal, and let's say you get into a crystal ball and you say, like, he is Leo Chenal, that's exactly the player he's going to be. Really important piece of Steve Spagnuolo's defense. But, like, if you know that he's going to be Leo Chenal, what's the valuation of that player? Is he a first round pick? Is he is he a top 50 pick? Like, where he's going to be somewhere in that range. But does he go 7 overall? Because that's where we were talking with Jalen Walker a year ago. And I think there will be similar conversations with Arvell Reese. But to your point about Matt Patricia, 2 of the players that I did write down after studying Arvell Reese initially were Jelani Tavai, who Patricia had in New England and drafted in Detroit. And then also Derek Barnes, another player that he drafted from Detroit when he was in Detroit, drafting him out of Purdue. And he was kind of like one of those hybrid Sam linebacker rush ends when he was with the Boilermakers. And so I think when you're looking at Arvell Reese, that skill set, there's going to be a lot of varying opinions on what his best role is moving forward. But watching him in this defense where, they shift out of multiple different looks and all the different ways that they disguise, all their different sim pressures. He's getting home on coffee houses and all the different things that they do with him. It's a really tantalizing skill set.
Yeah, he's a fun player, regardless of where he ends up. He's a fun player to watch. And again, there's going to be a lot of draft rooms that you put on tape to figure out where he's going to go, and then you just put on tape because he's a good football player, and he's certainly one of those guys. And his teammate, maybe linebacker 1 for a lot of people. Yeah. Again, coming into the year was probably linebacker 1. Again, would have been probably a day 2 pick last year. Sonny Styles, largely going unnoticed, again, on a absolutely loaded. Again, there's maybe at least 3 first round picks on that defense, and Arvell Reese, Caleb Downs for sure, and Sonny Styles probably in that categories. Is he, again, if you talk about, hey, where exactly is Arvell going to end up? Sonny is absolutely an inside linebacker. Is he linebacker number 1 for you in this group?
Yeah, I think if you're just looking at, like, from the traditional sense, and certainly, coming into this season when Arvell Reese was off my radar, Sonny Styles was my LB1 coming in. And the best way that I can describe Sonny Styles, he is who everybody thought Isaiah Simmons was going to be. When Isaiah Simmons was coming out of Clemson, I had a lot of reservations about what that role was going to look like, because honestly, if everyone says, like, oh, you just line him up in the middle of the field and let him run and chase, and that's not a real role in a position. What position is that? That's not how the NFL works, and that's not how football largely works in most schemes. Once you get to the college level, I think when you look at Sonny Styles with his size, at 6'4.5", 235, 240 pounds, he's 21 years old. He's going to run in the 4.4s. He's an explosive athlete. He's violent. He's physical. Yeah, like, his eyes could betray him at times. This is a converted safety. He was playing in the slot or when he first got there at Ohio State. So this is a guy that was still learning the position, but he's playing 2 years. This will be his second year now as a pure off-ball player. And so one of the things I wrote about him was like, all right, as long as he makes like marginal improvement mentally, which from what I've seen so far, like I think we have seen him make incremental improvements here this year as a senior. As long as he does that, he's going to go in the first round, because guys that run like that look like that have that ability to finish as a tackler the way that he does, he's going to have some misses just from playing a little bit out of control at times, but it's not like, oh man, I don't feel comfortable about him playing in the box. Like I feel like he can do everything that you need from a box play standpoint. And then what he does in the pass game in terms of being able to man up on tight ends, spot drop and match in zone coverage, a really effective blitzer as well. We've seen that. This guy is explosive. He's physical. He has all the physical traits. But then again, like we've seen him play in the box and read the triangle and deal with contact up, within 3 or 4 yards of the line of scrimmage, defeat blocks. He's not just running from 12 yards of depth and running the alley and making a play in the flat, and everybody gets excited about it. I really like what we've seen so far from Sonny Styles.
Yeah, that progression again at the NFL level, I think you hit it where you can't just be a jack of all trades, and that was again a lot of the conversation when Isaiah was coming out. It was like, man, this guy can do everything, but it came down to a coordinator and a coach being like, hey, yeah, he can do a lot of things, but he's going to do this really, really well for us. And again, that was, if you want to argue about early failings, like, hey, you better stick him in a spot and let him learn linebacker and play linebacker. And again, now that gives you some flexibility. It's the argument of what Kyle Hamilton has become in Baltimore, where Kyle, because of his special, unique height, weight, speed traits, his length traits, he was a safety only early on in Baltimore. They stick there, learn safety. Now you can start moving him around, doing a lot of those things. That is certainly, again, for a guy like Styles, he can do a lot of things. Hey, play linebacker for us, be a linebacker, then give us some flexibility to do some fun stuff. Arvell Reese is kind of the same conversation. As we get down to some of these other guys, you're kind of your hybrid, your non-traditional, you're over. Again, it's one of the interesting things going from college to pro. There's no overhang in pro football.
No.
It is an even field. So that guy who is awesome, your playmaker, again, everybody's got their star, their stud, their spur, their whatever out there making plays. It was Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah who, again, showed up in the NFL and kind of found a role. But like great players, a Harold Perkins type, again, as you start to get past those two, you start to get really into like, hey, is this a pass game guy? Is this a hybrid, a big nickel? Who are kind of the next linebackers that fit into that? Is it Harold or is it somebody else as you start to get down?
Yeah, I think, and again, going back to like the Isaiah Simmons deal of it, when he found, we'll say like the most staying power in the NFL, it was, all right, he goes to the Giants and he plays in their dime package on third down, on third and extra long. And that's when he can be like kind of like a matchup piece. And he was part of their pressure package. And that's where a lot of these guys that have come out with the skill set, and it's not like there's 5 of them every year, but the guys that we have seen come out, they kind of fall into that kind of role. You're not taking that in the first round at the end of the day, right? So I do have trouble right now with Harold Perkins from LSU. I would say the same thing about Suntaran Perkins from Ole Miss. No relation, by the way, for what it's worth. But Harold Perkins, senior from LSU, really interesting in that he shows up at LSU and he's a pass rusher first and foremost. He has 7.5 sacks and 4 forced fumbles as a true freshman, second team All SEC. This guy's going to be Micah Parsons, right? Well, the problem is that he was just over 200 pounds, and that's one of the things that gets lost with Micah is that Micah was running 4.3s, at his pro day at 250. And that's where the Arvell Reese thing, you can make that comparison because he's 240 plus. At least that's what he's listed at right now with Ohio State. With Harold Perkins, that size, that's eliminating factor from pass rush. And so LSU thought, all right, well, let's move him to off ball. Let's make a more traditional off ball. He gets hurt, so he's out for the year, the 1 year. But even Brian Kelly, he was doing interviews this offseason because they moved him now to be that overhang player in Blake Baker's defense. And he said, yeah, we wanted to make the move. We thought it would be best for him. We thought it would be best for us. But that was a mistake because he struggled with it from a mental standpoint. I've got alarm bells going off when I hear that when trying to project him to the NFL. Because now it's like, all right, well, if he had that trouble at LSU and they said well, we have to move him for the betterment of him and for this defense and for the health of the unit overall, I don't know what he is moving forward into the NFL. Is he a Sam backer? He's listed 220 pounds. How much more weight can you put on him without him losing some of that pass rush juice? You want him to be able to rush the passer, but at that size, what is it going to look like? And then, honestly, it's the same thing with Sontaran Perkins. Now, Perkins, he's even smaller than Harold Perkins. It's going to be really interesting to see how both of these guys project. Similar kinds of question marks. Both guys have been productive in spurts. Sontaran probably a little bit more consistently productive over the course of his career. He's done more on special teams. Like there's a lot to like with that profile. But in terms of trying to project what is their role on defense, who are they meeting with on a daily basis in the meeting room throughout the week of practice and during a game week, it's going to be a big progression projection for both players.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's it's a good mix. Who's another? I know you mentioned a couple others to me. Who's a guy that, again, you call them the guys that don't get draft love. They're not super traits guys, but man, you just put on film like this is a good football player. Again, there's one or two of them every year. They seem, it's the Jack Campbells out of Iowa, or the guys. It seems like Wisconsin's had a couple of them. Who's just that traditional, like this is just going to be a good pro for a long time, regardless of where he gets drafted.
Yeah, I think that the one that really fits the bill for me right now, because TJ Edwards is the first guy that comes to mind for me with that one, right? Where it was like, man, like, all right, I get that he's going to be a 4.8 guy, and usually the guys that run 4.8, they don't get drafted, but it just looked like he's going to be an NFL starter for a long time. I think that CJ Allen from Georgia he's going to get drafted, right? He's going to get drafted probably the second day of the draft. I think that he has done enough at that program. He's going to be, he's a flag carrier for one of the best defenses in college football. Like, you feel good about his ability to project. I do think that there are some athletic limitations there, but I think when you're looking at CJ Allen and projecting him forward, I feel good about his ability to key and diagnose. He's a really, really impressive tackler. He very rarely lets guys out of his grasp. He does enough in the pass game, especially from like a zone match standpoint, where it's like, all right, like, yeah, maybe he might lose one-on-one in space against some running backs down the field. Maybe, at 6'1", 230, bigger tight ends are going to get the best of them in a phone booth, that kind of thing. But, this is a guy that I think just checks so many of the mental boxes that I feel good about projecting him forward to the NFL. So CJ Allen is probably the first guy that comes to mind. But again, it really comes down to like, all right, like, who are the guys that just see it clean and you feel good about those first few that first few milliseconds there. Once the ball is snapped, they're not going to completely take themselves out of position.
Yeah, have enough traits to run it down. And again, no surprise for a guy that has been an Eagles guy that you would take a Georgia linebacker there. Again, had to be Georgia or Alabama linebacker because they'll probably end up right there with that great group. And again, you usually can't, if you pick somebody off of Kirby Smart, again, traditionally a Nick Saban defense on deep, you're going to hit more of those than you're going to miss. On the offensive side of the ball, all right, we won't have that conversation today because again, that's not in their purview. But again, it's a good group. There's going to be players, as there always is, some late risers. We'll see where these guys end up. It's going to be really fun. If you had to put a number on it, inside linebackers over under 3 in the first round, what do you think?
I think history would say probably take the under. I think the 2 Ohio State kids I feel good about ending up there if they declare. Sonny Styles, I think he's out of eligibility. He's a 4th-year player, although who knows? There could be a lawsuit that'll get
exactly.
find a way for him to end up at Columbus again next year. Arvell Reese, 3-year player, 1-year starter, still only 20 years old. Like, maybe he decides he wants to go back. But I think if both guys are in this class, I think those guys end up comfortably in the first round. I don't think Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas, who, there were mock drafts that had him in the top 10, top 15. I don't think that he's that level of player. I do think he's an NFL starter. I just don't think that he's that kind of needle mover. And honestly, there are very few that are in today's game. I think that's one of the big things is that you mentioned the comparison to running back. There are 4 linebackers in the NFL right now that are making north of $17 million a year. And when you look at, there's double the amount of safety, or double the amount of safeties make that, right? When you look around the landscape of the league, and it's like quadruple the amount of corners. When you look at the back 7, these are the guys that kind of get left by the wayside. There just aren't enough of them that make those needle moving plays. I think Anthony Hill probably just falls short of that tier. So I don't think that he goes that high. Whit Weeks, nice player from LSU. I don't know that he goes that high. So I think when you're looking at that group, it's really the 2 Ohio State kids ahead of the rest of the pack.
Yeah, it's a good group. Again, a fun day two for this group, certainly, because again, that's as every draft Nick says, day two is really where you hit on those starters. You find those good, solid guys. Again, maybe less of the upside, but really good football players. But Fran, as always, you crushed it. This is always fun talking linebackers with you. We will certainly have you on. He is at F Duffy NFL. Anything else exciting you have coming up for us?
Yeah, I mean, in the coming days, my draft board will be live on all of our All City Network sites. So just make sure you follow me along on social media. I'll be tweeting out the link once it's made available. Hit me up. My DMs are open. Happy to talk players anytime. So yeah, no, excited for us to continue through the draft process. It's crazy, man. We're halfway through the college season, so the hay is largely going to be in the barn here for a lot of these evaluations here in the coming weeks.
Yes, at least that on-field portion, because we know we are a
Yeah.
long way from any of the final stuff going through. But again, Fran, awesome. Make sure you follow him. Check out that All City Sports and everything that Fran has to offer. Fran, you're awesome. Great work today. We know you're going to keep scouting and keep giving that insight. So thanks for being on.
Thanks, Roger. Appreciate it. Talk soon.